Hello and welcome to Walker Tea Review, where we're looking at teas, we're tasting teas, appreciating them, and we're telling the stories behind some of the teas. So that's what we've got today. We've got a tea with an interesting story that goes along with it. We're going to be looking at that together. It's a Puer tea, which have their own story to begin with, but we're going to go ahead and get this tea started. This is a tea that is, let me show you the original packaging. This tea comes wrapped in plastic, then paper inside that. This puer is actually inside of it's like a mandarin orange. Some people are using the word kumquat, but it's the peel of a very small orange citrus fruit. So we've already opened one in order to save time, and so we've kept it kind of stored in this little bowl. Keep it sealed up. Unwrapping the paper, and you can kind of see in just a moment what we have here. We have our puer inside the orange peel. This one has broken up a little bit, but you can see a very thin dried orange peel. You can still see the pores of the skin there. And we're going to take a scoop out, get this one started up. There's so many teas to taste, and Walker Tea Review offers an opportunity to kind of taste them together, to get the experience of a range of teas and their flavors. Now, this tea is not scooping out so easily with a spoon, but I've got about a third of a spoon here, so I'm going to add that in. Then I'm just going to use my fingers to kind of get at the rest. And I'm going to scrape it in, as you see here, so that I am covering the bottom portion of this cup. And I'm probably not going to need a lot because puers can give a pretty potent flavor to them. So we're going to cover that up, set that aside for just a moment. Now the other thing about a puer, because of the way it's made, these leaves have been pressed together, they've been allowed to age, and sometimes there's some other added extra ingredients in there that we do not desire. So we're going to give these guys a rinse. I recommend rinsing. For some people want to rinse for every kind of, for example, green tea, and then others will say if it's a nice green tea that's been processed in a good environment, you're losing some valuable tea, so there's no reason to rinse. But that gives us a very quick rinse that we're going to set over to the side here, because we're not going to need that anymore. This water has been brought to a boil and allowed to cool for a few minutes. Puers, depending on their strength, I should mention a shu or an aged puer, they can get quite inky. So we're going to have to keep an eye on this one and not let it steep as long, because it will get potent, dark, inky in that pretty quickly. While we're waiting, you know what, I'm actually just going to keep the lid off of this so I can keep an eye on it a little better. Every once in a while, I'm going to kind of push the water around just to see what's happening with the steeping at the bottom. But this tea is from, this is an eBay store. It is Chinese Kung Fu Tea Art Store. This is their Zhangxiang Jinma Orange Puer is the full detailed name for this tea. 250 grams, which, if I recall correctly, is about 12 to 15 of your sizes like this. You're going to get that for $21.51. And we talked about the story of this tea. The puer is traditionally from Yunnan province, which is over towards Tibet area. The oranges, the peel they're placed in, comes from Guangdong, which is over towards the Taiwan side, coastal area, between, say, Taiwan and Hong Kong. So this tea brings together two different areas in order to create its flavor. Now we've got a pretty dark tea already here, so I'm going to have to pour for just a moment before we get into more of our dry leaf here, because we do not want this to get overly strong. This is going to be a rich color anyway. There we are. The other advantage of puer is you can get several steepings out of a good puer. But let's set going on before we get before this cools off too much. Our dry leaf. Let's talk about our tea for just a moment. Okay, you'll notice there is kind of a sweetness that seems to be coming or suggests it's coming off of the orange peel and from the orange, but there's a sweetness combined with the kind of at this point it's musty. A lot of puers do contain this kind of like a wet wood, like a mushroom, like a little bit of a tobacco-y type smell. And actually the sweetness in this one gives the idea of like a cherry scented pipe tobacco. It does have a fruity element to it. Okay, the puer itself, the leaves are quite fine. They are fairly small. Most of them are almost a milk chocolatey kind of slightly reddish brown, between red, gray brown, I would say. You do get some of the lighter colors, which makes you wonder, are these, but they don't look like tips. No, so I'm not going to use that word. So they're different levels, a little bit slightly different levels of oxidation there. Our leaf, or I should say our orange peel itself, has become quite brittle, brown in color, has absorbed a lot of the that musty puer smell. So if there was any fruity juiciness, sweetness, aroma, it's gone into the tea leaves itself. So I'm going to cover that up. Now, next thing we're going to do is look at our wet leaf. Talk a little bit about smells from it. Again, warm, wet, kind of a sweet wild mushroom. So it's got a bit of that musty. It's got a bit of like basement smell, is what it is. It's wet, sweet dirt kind of smell. Not off-putting, just that's what it is, and you're going to have to be prepared for that and come with that expectation. Okay, so you're not looking for vegetable, you're looking more for root type of smells. Now, you get into, well, to say there's more to the wet leaf, I should pause for just a moment to say that there's a change in color or shape. I would say it's gotten more of a consistent dark chocolate seal brown, which is like a grayish brown to it, but wet. So it's fairly consistent now as far as the color. Because they were such small pieces, there's not really a lot to talk about as far as opening up. But you can look at the picture to kind of refer for more. I'm pushing along because I don't want this tea to cool off too much. It is a deep, almost like a red wine color to it, almost like a port wine. It's got a bit of a reddish purple to it, more so than a red tea, more so than a Lipton, say. Okay. Again, kind of musty type smells coming off of this. Mushroom, damp wood. But the taste is where it really comes to show off its talent. It's got a bit of a smoothness, a softness, a silken kind of creaminess to it. So that's going well in its favor. At the same time, with that, it doesn't bring a lot of those damp, musty smells. It has a tinge of it so that you do get almost, it almost leans over towards the chocolatey type nature of it. It almost feels like there's been milk poured into it. It does have a kind of a milky, chocolatey aspect to it. It's not dominated by these old musty type smells. It does have a bit of a kind of a mushroom element to it, a dry, wild mushroom. Think of the brown. Think brown mushrooms. Okay. What else do we have? The aftertaste carries on. It's gentle. It does have. It carries that chocolatey, milky sweetness to it. It does tend to continue a kind of creaminess in the feel. Slight astringency, but not overbearing. So when you look at this tea, it did have a bit of it did have some sweetness that we already picked up as far as in the dry leaf, almost like a cherry note to it, but still had some of those musty type smells coming off of the leaf. You went over to the wet leaf, again, still those musty mushroom, damp wood kind of basement smells, dirt and root smells coming off the wet leaf. But then when you sit down for the cup, that's when it really comes into its form, that it balances a creamy, milky, almost chocolatey type texture to it. A sweetness in the aftertaste, with still a bit of those musty, mushroomy, I would say is the optimal word, bit of a mushroom. So if you're thinking a chocolate covered mushroom, or a mushroom dipped in a nice creamy, rich chocolate syrup, that's what you're getting. So that the mushroom gives a faintness, but that complements the chocolatey aspect. So that's why we gave this tea a 92. It's smooth. It has mild flavors. It's not musty. And so we look forward to this tea. This is something that you could keep because of the way it's kept. It's a great conversation piece. It's something you'd want to try and talk about with a group of people around you. Have a tasting together so that you can enjoy this tea. You're going to enjoy it with several steepings. Puers generally you can steep 5, on average, a good one will do 5 times or more. Again, this is something that that's why a group brings that value that you can steep and re-steep. But you want to keep an eye when you steep it. Keep an eye on it. Don't let it steep too long. It can get too inky. Some flavors can become overpowering and off-putting. Find the right amount of time, like we did here, that right amount of leaf, and enjoy it with friends.